This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
There was a new study from Allianz that found that almost half of investors, they don't have an income plan for retirement. They say that 48% are worried that they're going to have to live too frugally and not enjoy their retirement. And then only 27% report hearing their advisor discuss this topic. This is pretty alarming because, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought income planning was job number one.
Yeah, I have a hard time with those numbers for a lot of reasons, because my observation and hundreds of studies that I've read suggest that far fewer people than that have done any kind of retirement planning. But often people confuse income planning with retirement planning. They're not one and the same. So people will think, yeah, I want to retire at age 65. I'm going to live off my assets. That's my plan. I have a 401k. That's my plan. Well, a 401k is not a plan. It's simply a savings vehicle. And how you're going to live off those assets, what portion of, how you're going to convert those assets to income is a big deal. And what portion of that you're going to get to keep after the tax man and after inflation, all these are all big deals. And so my observation is that far fewer than 50% have done any kind of planning like that. So to hear that only 27% believe their advisors ever discuss these things, that is incredibly disappointing to me, but it doesn't surprise me in the sense that most quote-unquote financial advisors, and that's a very broad, generic term. I'm a financial advisor who specializes in retirement. Certified financial planners, for example, is a title that's bandied about a lot as being very important. Less than 11% of their education curriculum is actually spent on retirement planning, which is entirely where my focus is. So I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm a chartered retirement planning counselor. And so my point is that these titles that are used out there, like financial advisor, often are not properly understood. And most quote-unquote financial advisors are simply product salesmen. They're out there pushing a particular insurance product or pushing a particular kind of investment, and they're advising you to do what it may or may not be in your best interest, but often it's what comes with a commission. And so financial advisor is a very broad term. It certainly, in my mind, does not include retirement specialists like myself, those who are true income planners. Again, most people who use the term financial advisors, they more commonly use the term wealth manager, which simply means they're gathering assets. They're pooling your money with a bunch of other people in particular investment models, and they're simply gathering assets under management. That's not planning by any stretch of the imagination. I can give you an example. There's a woman we just met. She came to our class. She came to a number of our events. I thought really highly of her, and she had a couple $1 million that she had accumulated over time. But as we dove into her plan, it became apparent that her quote unquote financial advisor had failed her in 10 different areas that had harmed her, in my belief, to the tune of certainly tens of thousands of dollars, if not $100,000 or more. There was no question about that. What he had done was self-serving, and it was a 30-year relationship. So she came, wanted to work with us, and then surprisingly said, hey, can I take my plan and have the old guy implement it? And I'm like, well, okay, that's all of our work you want to have him paid for, I guess. It was kind of a strange conversation, but my point is that all he had done was help her grow money in mutual funds. But for example, in his case, he had never encouraged her to participate in her 401k plans. Over a 30-year time horizon, almost all of her money was outside of tax-advantaged retirement plans. She was not tax-advantaged on her money. She was getting taxed every year on the gains in her accounts. And not only that, that money was publicly visible and subject to creditors if she got into trouble. There was all sorts of problems with this. None of the healthcare issues that she needed to address in her late 60s had ever been addressed during this 30-year relationship. And so income planning had not been done. They'd simply grown the assets. She didn't know which of her accounts she was going to turn into income, and in terms of systematic withdrawals and things like that. So again, I don't want to ever speak ill of any other advisors, but the term financial advisor is used very loosely. And if people have not had true income planning conversations, then I say, get a second opinion. Talk to other advisors who truly specialize in the retirement realm. If you haven't had conversations about long-term care, which is the number one time bomb that's going to blow up most people's retirement plans, then you need to talk to an advisor who's conscious of these issues and who deals actively in that kind of planning. So don't just take the term financial advisor and think that it means the same for everyone that you may encounter. Every professional person specializes in different things, and the responsibility really is on each of us preparing for retirement to seek out the people who specialize in what we do. And sometimes you may have a great relationship with a medical doctor. You need to change to a specialist because you have a certain condition. It's the same thing with retirement planning. Those who got you to where you are may not be the best ones to take you through that last chapter of life, because the rules of the game for accumulating money are very different than the rules of the game for distributing money and making sure that money doesn't run out prematurely. We don't want to run out of money before we run out of time. And so you really do need an income planner. And again, long answer to a short question, but you're asking a great question there. And there's a lot of pitfalls that I'm hoping to address with that long response, that people can really think about: who am I engaging with? What are they actually providing to me? Is it time for a second opinion? We invite people in for a second opinion. And we may not be a good fit for you either, but I can guarantee you're going to hear some new ideas.
Something I want to continue the conversation on here. You mentioned a few moments ago about, it's basically the number one killer of retirement is the cost of healthcare, the cost of long-term care. A lot of folks forget about that. And, I want to tap into actor Tim Daly. He's actually from Wings and The Sopranos. You may recognize him. He has a newfound respect for caregivers because he was actually one himself. Listen to this.
I was fortunate enough to be able to care for my mom as she was aging. At first, that support was mostly financial, but as she aged, she had to give up a little bit of control over her life, and I helped her with that. It was difficult on both of us because she was coming to grips with the things that she couldn't do anymore, and I was seeing her struggle. She relied on me to be part of her life and gave me a lot of chores to help prove that.
Well, I think if you've never been in the situation to be a caregiver, or maybe you have, or maybe you are right now being a caregiver or having to hire a caregiver, you see the emotional toll it takes on everybody. It's certainly a thankless job and a costly job at that. And, planning for healthcare and long-term care, these are conversations you have all the time, right, Mark?
Oh, my heavens, yeah, every single day of my professional career. This is an obsession for me because I've lived it my entire life. I saw two grandfathers deal with forms of dementia, one who had money, one who did not. I saw my mother struggle through her last few years of life and all that my father went through caring for her. I have a child with disabilities who will be dependent on my wife and me for life. My wife has multiple sclerosis. I have my own health issues. And so I think Jimmy Carter's wife, Rosalind, said it best. And I can't remember the exact quote, but she basically said, all of us either will be caregivers or will be care recipients. All of us are going to go through this. And so most people don't get to suddenly die in their sleep and move on to heaven or wherever they were headed without any suffering. Most of us are going to degrade over time, and we're going to kind of slide very clumsily and painfully across home plate. And that process involves all the people that we love. So when we talk about cost, too often we fixate on the financial cost, which can be overwhelming. We're talking $8,000 a month is the average cost per spouse. So that can quickly decimate a person's retirement savings. There's an enormous financial cost, but there's also an emotional cost, a social cost, and a psychological cost, which is borne primarily by the people we love the most. And that is something that until you've lived it or seen it up close, most people don't understand it. I've lived it. I've seen it very up close, and I've seen it through my immediate family as well as through hundreds and hundreds of clients. And again, 30 years of reading on this topic. This is the number one social crisis of healthcare crisis and social crisis, I would say, of our time. Medical science and technology doesn't allow us to die anymore. We linger. They keep us alive, but science and technology doesn't pay for that. We have to pay for that lingering. And so it's critical in my mind that families meet, and we provide tools to help families prepare for those conversations. I've had some clients ask me to actually lead the family meeting where we open up with the children about what kind of resources are there. We don't always give the numbers to the children of exactly how much money mom and dad have, but we let them know where it's at. I can think of a tremendous example of a woman I love. She's very dear to me. She moved into my neighborhood when I was a teenager. We got to know each other through church, and she went through a divorce. Her husband was a prominent high-income earner here in Las Vegas. She ended up becoming a nurse, and she is far better prepared than the ex-husband, the wealthy attorney type. But I had a meeting once where her 3 daughters came in. Now, I had known these daughters when they were little 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. They came in with their own children to my conference room. We had a conversation where we were able to talk about these issues, but also share with those daughters what their mother had done to prepare. And there was all sorts of crying going on. I mean, it was a wonderful experience for me in the sense that I was able to see these girls have an enormous increase in their already great appreciation for their mother, because they realized their mother was relieving them of this tremendous burden that's normally borne by family members. You know, it took me about 5 years to convince my own dad to have a family meeting. And he did that. He called his kids in from around the country. We had a meeting in a town just north here of Las Vegas where his new wife was in the room. And he basically outlined for the kids what's going to happen as he gets older. And my sisters just were bawling because, number one, they love their daddy.
That's terrible. Yeah, no one wants that.
Well, no, but it was actually a good thing. So it sounds like a horrible experience, but they were bawling because out of relief and out of gratitude, because they realized that their father has put plans in place so that as he ages, he will be taken care of in a way that they will be comfortable with. They will not have to leave their families, their husbands, their jobs to take care of him. The resources and the plans are in place. Matter of fact, he identified me as the one of the 5 children. I'm the one of the 5 that's going to pull the plug. And for my sisters to hear that they didn't have to do that was a tremendous gift. So again, when we talk about end of life, when we talk about health care and long-term care, specifically in retirement, these are enormous issues that every person, every family needs to deal with. And I would say especially women, because women outlast men. You know, 3/4 of women go into retirement single, either by choice or by circumstance. And many of this generation don't have children to take care of them. And so how's that going to happen, and who's going to provide those services? You know, it may not be hands-on service, but who's going to coordinate the caregivers who do the hands-on service? And so I could go on for hours on this topic. I won't, but I thank you for bringing it up because it's such a critical issue. And statistically speaking, less than 7% of financial advisors ever talk about this issue. And I think that's total malpractice. It's the number one time bomb that blows up people's retirement plans. Do they have funds and strategies in place to care for health care expenses, and specifically the assisted care that is needed as we get older, either because of aging, frailty, or disease that's not covered by Medicare?
Mark, if you are like me, if I get a gift card for, a birthday or whatnot throughout the year, it goes directly into my wallet. I use it usually relatively quickly. What about you?
Well, I was looking at 4 on my dresser counter this morning that have been sitting there for years, movie tickets and things. And
what?
Yeah, I just don't quite get out to the movies the way I used to, I guess. Yeah, the meal tickets we tend to use, but a lot of these gift cards for my family, certainly for me, unfortunately go to waste because I don't quite get around to them. I need to re-gift them or something.
No, you got to get out there and use them. It's essentially cash sitting right there. And this goes directly to my point here because, it's estimated that there are $23 billion in unused gift cards just floating around out there.
Wow.
So everyone check those junk drawers that you have. Go through your wallet. Maybe there's one behind a credit card somewhere. Check the balance on it. And it got me thinking about, folks that are just wasting that money. It's just sitting there, right? What about those that are planning for retirement? And I know that there's a term for this. Yes. It's called dead money. People forget about old 401ks and whatnot. Mark, weigh in on this.
Well, there are certainly forgotten accounts that need to be discovered and they need to be consolidated. And I was just doing that yesterday for a young man. There were 3 different retirement plans. A guy the day prior, there were 4 old retirement plans we were consolidating. So yeah, there's old kind of inactive accounts that are hopefully still growing, of course. But I find the bigger problem with quote unquote dead money is people have money that's just not actively working for them. I had another business owner come in to me this spring, and he was preparing to sell his business to family members. And without getting into personal details, it was over $1 million sitting at the bank. And it was just in savings account. And I remember asking him, why the bank and why a savings account? Because obviously they don't pay much. And he gave me this interesting look, and he said, well, I guess it was just familiar. So he was busy building his business, doing his thing that he does well, and the money was coming in, fortunately. And God bless him, because he actually saved it. He didn't blow it like a lot of people. So the good thing is he actually had the building blocks there for us. They were inactive. They weren't really working well. And so we had the privilege of being able to show him ways to get that money working for him. It'd be like me asking him, do you have 30 employees, half of which are sitting around, and not doing anything? He would never condone that in his business, but in his personal financial life, that's kind of what had happened, because he was too busy to kind of supervise and act on the situation. So this money had accumulated, and fortunately they chose to hire us to give them ideas and implement different kinds of investments that were far more advantageous to them than a bank account. So dead money comes in a variety of forms, but I think that's I know that's a very common problem with people that come to the classes we do at the college. Is far too many of them have far too much money sitting in taxable bank and brokerage accounts when they should be in tax advantaged accounts, and that money can be easily repositioned with just a little bit of thought and a very small effort. And so that we spend a lot of time on that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Dead money is not something people talk about or think about. And like this successful business owner, before you know it, you can find yourself sitting on a heap of money that's very inactive that should be out there working for you. Just like employees, you don't want sitting inactively. Your money should be employed.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts' principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.